let's start with the date. June 3rd, 2011. I mean, for some of us that feels like a lifetime ago, but for the people involved in this story, I have to imagine it's a day that's just stuck on an infinite, terrible loop.
It really is. And you have to picture the scene. We're in Bloomington, Indiana.
A classic Big Ten college town.
Exactly. The semester's just wrapped up. That pressure cooker of final exams is finally gone. And the town has that. You know, that specific, warm, kind of humid feeling of early summer.
Yeah, where everything slows down.
It's that kind of night. The kind of night where the rules feel a little suspended.
It's got a deceptively safe atmosphere, I'd imagine.
Oh, absolutely. When the bulk of the students go home for the summer, the campus kind of shrinks on itself. It feels more intimate. You feel like you own the streets.
Right, you're with your friends, you're young, you feel invincible.
Totally invincible. And walking right through the middle of this scene is Lauren Spierer. She's 20 years old, a student at Indiana University.
And she's not from there originally. She's from Scarsdale, New York, studying fashion merchandising. And every single thing I've read about her, every source we pulled for this deep dive, it all describes her as this absolute spark plug of a person.
Mm-hmm. A huge personality.
Huge, but physically tiny. And I mean really tiny, like 4'11".
And that detail, her physical description, 4'11", maybe 95 pounds soaking wet. That is such crucial context for everything that happens later.
Why do you say that?
Because we're not just talking about a young woman. We're talking about someone who, physically speaking, had almost zero defense mechanism against the world if things went sideways.
She was just incredibly vulnerable.
Incredibly vulnerable, just by virtue of her stature alone.
So, okay, here's the setup. It's 4:30 in the morning. Lauren leaves a friend's apartment.
The absolute middle of the night.
And she's barefoot.
Totally barefoot. She has no phone.
No phone.
No purse, no keys.
Just nothing.
Nothing. And she's trying to walk to her own apartment, which is at the Smallwood Plaza. It's only 2.5 blocks away.
2.5 blocks! I mean, in a college town, that is a distance you don't even think about.
It's a 3-minute walk. You can probably see the next building from where you're standing.
And yet she never makes it. She steps out of that apartment, she turns a corner, and she vanishes.
And vanishes is the right word.
I don't use it lightly. I mean, there's no forensic trail, there's no body found in the woods a few days later, there's no confession, nothing.
At the black hole.
And it is now February 3rd, 2026. We are closing in on 15 years since that night. And we still don't have the one thing that usually breaks these cases.
A physical trace. Any kind of evidence.
Anything.
And that is the absolute nightmare scenario for investigators, for the family. Usually you find a shoe. You find a phone pinging a tower. You find a witness who heard a scream, something.
But in the Spierer case,
the silence is just deafening. But, and this is the but that drives everyone who follows this case absolutely crazy, we actually know more about the minutes leading up to her disappearance than we do in almost any other missing persons case.
that's the paradox we're diving into today, isn't it? This isn't your typical whodunit where we have no suspects and no timeline. We have an agonizingly detailed minute-by-minute timeline right up until the moment the shutter just comes down.
We know who she was with. We know what they were drinking. We even know about the arguments they had.
Which is exactly why we're here. We aren't just going to retell the true crime story you might have heard 5 or 10 years ago. We are looking at this through the lens of 2026.
Yeah, and we've got a stack of sources that give us a completely different vantage point. We're looking at some of the recent reporting from the 14th anniversary, but I think more importantly, we're looking at this 2024 book by a journalist named Sean Cohen. It's called College Girl Missing, and it blew the lid off some of the official stories that have been circulating for years.
And we are going to get into the weeds, the deep, deep weeds of the civil court documents, because there is a massive difference between what you as a person think is justice and what the law actually defines as liability.
And we're going to talk about why those lawsuits, the ones the Spierer family filed against the men she was with, why they failed. And I want to warn you, the legal analysis we're going to get into later on, concepts like proximate cause and duty of care, it's going to be frustrating.
He's going to make you angry.
It probably will. But
Yeah.
it explains why, almost 15 years later, nobody is in handcuffs.
And on top of all that, we have to talk about the internet's favorite rabbit hole for this case, the FBI Freedom of Information Act requests, and this potential connection to the serial killer Israel Keyes.
Which is a lot more than just some random conspiracy theory when you actually see how the FBI responded to those requests.
Okay, so let's get into it. The mission today is to try and understand how a person can vanish in plain sight, and maybe why our legal system seems almost designed to protect the very people who might have let it happen. Let's start with the timeline. Walk us through the beginning of that night, June 2nd, 2011.
Okay, so to really understand the disappearance, you have to understand the condition she was in. This wasn't some sudden abduction at 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. This was the result of a long, escalating night of bad decisions.
It builds.
It built. It starts on Thursday, June 2nd. Lauren is at her apartment in Smallwood Plaza. It's
Yeah.
a nice building, very student-heavy. And she's just hanging out watching the NBA playoffs.
Miami Heat versus the Dallas Mavericks. Simpler times.
Much simpler time. She's drinking some wine with friends. It's super casual. She has a boyfriend, Jesse Wolf. They've been together for a while. They actually met at a camp in Pennsylvania years before.
So it was a serious relationship.
It seems so. And Jesse is at his own place that night. And here is the first critical detail of the timeline. Lauren texts Jesse that she's going to bed.
Okay, so she sets the expectation, I'm in for the night.
Exactly. And this establishes Jesse's initial alibi. He thinks his girlfriend is asleep. He has no reason to worry about her, no reason to check on her until the next morning.
But she doesn't go to sleep.
She does not. Around 12:30 a.m., so now it's technically Friday, June 3rd, she seems to get a second wind. She leaves her apartment and she heads over to a neighbor's place in the same complex, a guy named Jason Rosenbaum.
And this is where the cast of characters starts to get really complicated, right? Who is at Rosenbaum's apartment?
So it's kind of a pre-game atmosphere. You've got Jason Rosenbaum, and he's joined by two other guys who become absolutely central to this entire mystery, Corey Rossman and Michael Beth.
Rosenbaum, Rossman, and Beth. These three names become the persons of interest trinity that the media has focused on for over a decade.
That's them. Now, at this apartment, the consumption, it shifts. We're not just sipping wine anymore. According to the court documents and all the reporting in Sean Cohen's book, the alcohol intake just ramps up significantly.
Okay.
But there's another layer here. It's something that often gets whispered about in this case, but we need to state it clearly. There was substance use beyond alcohol.
We're talking about drugs.
We are? Sources from the civil suits and other reports point to speculation of Klonopin, which is a benzodiazepine, a powerful sedative, and also potentially cocaine.
And why does this matter so much?
It matters because of Lauren's medical history. She had a very serious condition called long QT syndrome.
Okay, break that down for us. What is long QT?
It's a heart rhythm disorder. It basically affects your heart's electrical system. So if you have long QT, your heart can suddenly go into these chaotic, dangerously fast beats. It can lead to fainting spells or, in the most severe cases, sudden cardiac arrest. Now, think about the pharmacology here for a second. You take a heart that is already prone to electrical instability. You add a depressant, like alcohol. Then you add another depressant, a benzo like Klonopin. And then maybe you throw a stimulant like cocaine on top of it.
You're creating a physiological time bomb.
That is exactly what it is. So she isn't just a drunk college girl stumbling around. She is, from a medical standpoint, incredibly fragile.
She's walking on a razor's edge.
A razor's edge. Her physical state is deteriorating rapidly. And despite all of this, the group decides to move the party. Lauren and Corey Rossman leave the apartment to go to a bar. They head to Kilroy's sports bar.
Kilroy's, if you know Bloomington, you know Kilroy's. It's an institution.
It is. So they get there, and they are only inside for about 30 minutes, a half an hour. But this 30-minute window is where the wheels just completely come off the bus.
Okay.
Inside that bar, two things happen that basically seal her fate for the rest of the night. One, she loses her shoes.
She just takes them off in a bar.
I mean, the floor of a college sports bar is not a place you want to be barefoot. It's sticky. There could be broken glass. The fact that she's barefoot suggests she's either in pain from her shoes, or she's just totally disoriented, or she just doesn't care anymore.
And the second thing.
She loses her cell phone.
And this is 2011. We're in the iPhone 4 era. I mean, people were glued to their phones then, too. Losing your phone is a crisis.
It is. It completely cuts her lifeline. If she gets separated from her friends, she has no GPS, no way to call Jesse, no way to call a cab. She's incommunicado. And here's where the official documentation gets really interesting. We actually have the report from the Indiana State Excise Police.
The police that regulate bars.
Exactly. And they cited Kilroy's months later, specifically because of what happened this night.
For serving her.
They were cited for furnishing alcohol to a minor. But the report notes a specific failure. Lauren used a fake ID to get in. That's pretty standard college behavior, right? But the excise police report noted, and I'm quoting here, that there were discrepancies in the physical description on the ID that the door staff completely missed.
Meaning the bouncer looked at this 4'11" girl, looked at an ID that probably said she was 5'4" or had different colored eyes, and just waved her in anyway.
That's exactly what it implies. It confirms that all the safeguards failed. She was visibly intoxicated, she was using a bad ID, and she was still let in to drink more. So by the time they leave Kilroy's, she's well past the point of no return.
So they leave the bar. It's late. She's barefoot, no phone. She's with Corey Rossman. Where do they go? Do they finally go home?
They head back toward her building, Smallwood Plaza, and this is where the timeline gets violent. They get inside the building. Lauren is stumbling badly. Rossman is, helping her or maybe dragging her, depending on how you interpret the security footage. And they run into another student right there near the elevator.
And the student knows Lauren.
He's actually a friend of Jessie Wolf, her boyfriend.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy sees Lauren in this state, just wasted, barefoot, hanging off this guy. And he gets aggressive.
He's protective.
He's protective. He reportedly confronts Rossman. He says something like, "What are you doing with her? You're not taking care of her." An argument starts. A fight breaks out.
Mm-hmm.
And Corey Rossman takes a solid punch to the face.
Okay, I want to pause here because this punch becomes the absolute pivot point for Rossman's entire legal defense later on, doesn't it?
It is his get-out-of-jail-free card. It is everything. Rossman claims that this punch caused him to suffer amnesia for the rest of the night.
The whole rest of the night.
His story is, I got hit, and the next thing I remember is waking up in my bed the next morning.
I got punched and I forgot everything. I mean, I have to be the skeptic here. That sounds incredibly, incredibly convenient.
Look, it is medically possible to have a concussion that wipes out your short-term memory. It happens. However, in the context of a missing person investigation, where he is the last person seen with her in that location, it creates a black hole of information right where you need it most.
He claims he remembers nothing after the elevator.
Nothing.
But the night didn't end at the elevator. That's the crazy part.
No. And this is probably the most baffling part of the whole timeline. They are standing in Lauren's building. Her apartment is just upstairs. Her bed is right there. If you are a friend and she is this wasted, what do?
You put her in her bed, you put a glass of water and a trash can next to her, and you leave. End of story.
That's what a reasonable person does, but they don't do that. Corey Rossman does not take her to her apartment. Instead, the surveillance footage shows Rossman, remember, the guy who just got punched in the face and supposedly has amnesia, carrying Lauren Spierer out of the building.
Carrying her.
He has her slung over his shoulder.
Like a sack of potatoes.
Exactly. He carries her out of her own safe building and walks her down the street to his apartment, which is in a totally different complex a few blocks away.
Why? I mean, if he's concussed, if he's so out of it, why is he carrying a human being through the streets of Bloomington?
That is the multi-million-dollar question. It's the question the police have asked 1,000 times and never gotten a straight answer. So they get to Rossman's apartment. It's now around 3 a.m., and Rossman's roommate, Michael Beth, he comes home about 30 minutes later, around 3:30.
And what does Beth find when he walks in?
He walks into a total disaster zone. Rossman is sick. He's throwing up. He eventually just passes out in his bed, which leaves Michael Beth alone with Lauren.
And Beth is the sober one in this situation.
Relatively speaking, yes. He sees that Lauren is an absolute mess. He tries to get her to sleep on the couch. He tries to calm her down. But she's agitated. She refuses to sleep. She wants to leave. She wants to go somewhere. She's not making a lot of sense.
So does Beth walk her home? I mean, her apartment is so close.
No. He does what I can only describe as the hot potato maneuver. He walks her to the neighbor's apartment. He takes her back to Jason Rosenbaum's place, where the entire night started hours ago.
So she's just being passed around this circle of guys. Nobody is actually taking ownership of getting her to safety.
Nobody. She's a problem they keep handing off to the next person. So she ends up back with Rosenbaum. Rosenbaum sees the state she's in. He realizes, okay, she can't walk home. So he starts making phone calls.
To who?
He calls other friends, trying to find someone with a car to come pick her up. He's on the phone saying, hey, come get Lauren. She's really messed up.
But it's after 4 a.m. at this point. Nobody's answering their phone.
No one picks up. So at 4:30 a.m., according to Rosenbaum's one and only account, Lauren insists on leaving. She says she's walking home. And Rosenbaum, he lets her.
He lets the barefoot, phoneless, medically fragile girl just walk out the door into the dark.
He says he stood at his doorway and watched her walk to the corner of 11th and College. He watched her round the corner, out of his sight. And that is the last time anyone admits to seeing Lauren Spierer alive.
It just makes you want to scream. I mean, do anything else. Stop her, lock the door, call 911, call her boyfriend Jesse. Do anything but just open the door and let her walk away.
It is a cascade of failures. It's just one after another. Every single person she encountered that night had a chance to stop the clock. The bouncer at Kilroy's, the friend at the elevator, Corey Rossman, Michael Beth, Jason Rosenbaum. They all had a moment where they could have saved her, and they all, for whatever reason, missed it or chose not to take it.
So she vanishes. The sun comes up on Friday, June 3rd. When does the alarm bell finally go off?
Jesse Wolf, the boyfriend, he sends a text later that morning. No reply. It's not super unusual yet. But as the day goes on and she's not answering calls, the silence starts to get louder. By the time her friends and family get the police involved, we are already losing those critical first hours of the investigation.
And this brings us to the investigation itself, or, as so many people who follow this case see it, the deep frustration. We have this core group of guys, Rossman, Rosenbaum, Beth, and the police officially call them persons of interest.
Which is a very crucial distinction.
Yeah.
They are not suspects, they are persons of interest.
But Lauren's parents, Charlene and Robert Spierer, they are not buying the "we don't know anything" line for 1 second.
The parents have been on an absolute warpath for the truth since day one. They are convinced, and have said so publicly for years, that these men know more, if not everything, about what happened. And this is where that new book by Sean Cohen, College Girl Missing, really starts to change the public narrative.
It was released in 2024.
Right, and Cohen had access to sources and details that just weren't public before.
Yeah.
And he argues pretty forcefully that the police kind of botched the beginning of the investigation.
How so?
He paints a picture of a very slow-footed start. The Bloomington Police Department, the BPD, they treated it like a standard college kid went on a bender and will turn up in a day case for the first 48 hours.
A pretty common assumption in a college town.
Very common. But by the time they realized this was a potential abduction or even a homicide, that critical window had slammed shut. The men had all lawyered up.
Let's talk about that phrase, lawyering up, because to the public, it looks like an immediate admission of guilt. If you're innocent, why do you need a high-priced criminal defense attorney?
That is the court of public opinion, 100%. But in the actual court of law, it is the smartest thing you could possibly do. These were young men from wealthy families, and their parents did exactly what any parent with those means would do. They hired the best legal protection money could buy and told their sons, do not say a word to anyone.
And Cohen talks about the polygraph issue in the book.
This part is fascinating. So the police wanted to polygraph all the guys. Their lawyers, of course, said absolutely not. Instead, the families paid for private polygraphs to be conducted.
Okay, explain the strategy there. What's the point of a private lie detector test?
It's completely risk-free for them. You take the test in a private office with your lawyer present. If you pass, you wave the results in front of the media and the police and say, look, I'm innocent. Here's the proof. You hand it over.
And if you fail?
Attorney-client privilege. You bury the results in a file cabinet and nobody ever knows you even took the test. It allows you to test your own story and see if it holds up, but without any risk of the police finding a crack in it.
That is grimly brilliant.
It's high-level legal maneuvering. But Sean Cohen found something in his research that directly challenges the story that those lawyers were so carefully protecting, specifically about Corey Rossman and his supposed memory loss.
The punch.
The punch. Remember, Rossman's entire story hinges on the idea that the punch at the elevator wiped his memory. He claims he was basically a zombie from that point on.
Right. Incapacitated.
Well, Cohen dug into the phone records. And the surveillance footage and cell tower data show that around 3:00 a.m., while Lauren is supposedly either collapsed on a curb or being carried by him, Corey Rossman is on his phone.
He's making a call.
He is making a call to a female friend of his in Massachusetts.
Wait a minute. He's not just fumbling with his phone. He's having a conversation.
The records indicate that a call connected and lasted for a period of time. Now just think about that for a second. If you are so concussed that you have retrograde amnesia, are you really cognizant enough to scroll through your contacts, find a friend who lives in a different time zone, dial the number, and hold a conversation?
No way. It completely undermines the "I was too out of it to know what was happening" defense. If you can talk to someone in Massachusetts, you can talk to the police.
It suggests very strongly that the memory gap might be a bit more selective than he claimed. And Cohen goes even further. He alleges that there was coordination between the men even years later.
Coordination in what way? Like getting their stories straight.
Cohen claims that years later, when he was writing the book, He managed to make contact with Rossman, and almost immediately after that contact, Jason Rosenbaum suddenly agreed to talk to him.
The timing felt suspicious.
Extremely. It suggested to Cohen that they were still communicating behind the scenes, potentially checking with each other. This reporter is asking questions. What are you saying? What should I say?
It really feels like a conspiracy of silence.
It feels that way. But feeling something and proving it in a court of law are two completely different worlds. And that brings us to the massive legal wall that the Spierer family slammed into.
Right. They couldn't get a criminal trial because there was no direct evidence of a crime, no body, no weapon, no confession, so they went the civil route instead.
The case is Spierer v. Rossman.
So this is where we need to really unpack the legal system. Why did the parents sue? I mean, was it for money?
No, absolutely not. They didn't care about the money. They wanted one thing: discovery.
Okay, explain that for the non-lawyers listening. What is discovery?
In a criminal case, you have the Fifth Amendment. You can sit there and say nothing, plead the Fifth.
Yeah.
In a civil case, for the most part, you don't have those same protections. You can be subpoenaed. You can be forced into a deposition.
So you have to talk.
You have to sit in a room under oath and answer questions from the other side's lawyers. If you lie, it's perjury, which is a crime. If you refuse to answer, you can be held in contempt of court. The Spierers sued these men to force them into a chair and make them talk, under oath. They wanted the phone records, the text messages, all the details of that night.
It was a fact-finding mission that was just disguised as a lawsuit.
Precisely. And they sued them on two main grounds: negligence and something called the Dram Shop Act.
Dram shop. What's that?
It's kind of an archaic term. But basically, the law says if a bar, or in some states, a social host, provides alcohol to someone who's clearly intoxicated and that person then goes out and gets hurt or hurts someone else, the provider can be held liable.
So the Spierers' argument was, you guys kept feeding her drinks when she was already gone? You created this danger. You are responsible for what happened to her.
That was the core of their argument. But they lost. The case was thrown out.
Dismissed completely.
Dismissed on what's called summary judgment. The Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals upheld the dismissal. And the reasons why are just a masterclass in how cold and calculating the law can be.
Okay, so let's break it down. What was the first reason the judge said no?
The first and maybe biggest hurdle was a legal concept called proximate cause.
Okay, define that for us.
To win a negligence lawsuit, you have to prove a direct, unbroken chain of events. A leads to B, which leads to C. So in this case, the argument is you gave her the drinks, A, which made her dangerously drunk, B, which caused her to what?
Die.
But how did she die? That's the missing link. That's the C. Without a body, you can't prove the cause of death. Did she stumble into a construction site and fall? Did she have a cardiac event from the substances and fall into a creek and drown? Or did a stranger grab her off the street?
And that stranger danger theory is actually what saved the defendants in court.
Ironically, yes. The defense lawyers argue that if a random serial killer or some predator grabbed Lauren off the street, that is what the law calls an intervening criminal act.
Meaning, okay, we might have gotten her drunk, but we didn't cause the serial killer to be driving down that specific street at that exact moment.
You've got it.
Mm.
Unless the abduction was somehow foreseeable, which legally a random kidnapping is almost never considered foreseeable, then the chain of causation is broken. The judge ultimately ruled that the parents could only speculate on the cause of Lauren's injury, and you cannot win a lawsuit based on speculation.
That is infuriating. The fact that she is so missing that there is absolutely no trace of her is the very thing that protects the people who might be responsible.
Yeah, a perfect, tragic, legal catch-22. The more effective the disappearance, the harder it is to prove liability. But the second legal concept the court used is even more important, I think, for everyone listening to understand. It's called duty of care.
This is the whole am I my brother's keeper question, legally speaking.
It is. The court had to answer a fundamental question. Did Corey Rossman, Michael Betz, and Jason Rosenbaum have a legal obligation to keep Lauren safe?
I mean, morally, most people would scream, yes, of course they did. They were her friends.
Morally, absolutely. But legally, the court said no. Indiana law, like the law in many states, makes a big distinction between a special relationship, like a parent and child or a teacher and student, and what they call social peers.
So just to be clear, if I'm out drinking with my buddy and he gets wasted, I have no legal duty to stop him from, say, walking into traffic.
Generally speaking, no, you don't. The court actually cited other Indiana cases like Lather v. Hahn. These were situations where friends tried to take car keys away from a drunk driver, failed, gave the keys back, and then the person went out and died in a crash. The courts have consistently ruled that social peers do not assume a legal duty of care just by being there or being friends.
But wait, even if they started to help, I mean, Rossman carried her. Doesn't that mean he took responsibility for her at that moment?
That's the assumption of duty argument. And the Stierer's lawyers argued that point very hard. They said the moment you picked her up and carried her, you took control of her safety. You can't just dump her later.
It makes sense.
It does. But the court didn't buy it. They found that because the men eventually let her go, and because she, allegedly, walked out of Rosenbaum's apartment on her own, they didn't control her or keep her in their custody against her will. Their position was, we tried to help, she wanted to leave, so we let her leave. And the law says that is allowed.
So the final ruling is essentially, you can be a terrible friend, you can abandon a vulnerable person in the middle of the night when they are in your care, and you can still be 100% legally innocent.
That is the hard, cold truth of it. The law sets a minimum standard for legal liability, not a maximum standard for human morality. The judge basically said, this is a profound tragedy, but it's not a tort. It's not something the civil court can fix.
So the lawsuit fails, the criminal case is completely cold, and this just leaves us with theories. What do people think actually happened to her?
Well, if we accept the court's logic that we simply don't know what happened after 4:30 a.m., we have to look at the main possibilities. And theory A is the one that most people who follow this case believe. It's the accidental overdose and cover-up.
This is the theory that she never actually left the apartments, that she never made it to that corner.
Exactly. Look at the cocktail of substances in her system. A huge amount of alcohol, allegedly Klonopin, maybe cocaine, all on top of her serious heart condition. It is entirely possible, maybe even probable, that she went into cardiac arrest in one of those rooms.
And the boys panic. They're college kids. They think, we give her the drugs, we're going to go to jail for manslaughter for the rest of our lives.
Right, so in a moment of sheer terror and self-preservation, they hide the body. They dispose of her somewhere, maybe in a dumpster. You have to remember, Bloomington is a college town. There's always construction, always dumpsters being hauled away to landfills. It would explain why the search dogs never tracked her scent past that final corner.
It would explain the immediate silence. It would explain the instant lawyering up.
It checks all the boxes. It's the Occam's razor theory. The simplest explanation is often the right one.
But then there's theory B, the one the court's decision relied on, the stranger abduction.
And we absolutely cannot dismiss this out of hand. A petite, clearly intoxicated young woman walking alone at 4:30 in the morning is... she is a crime of opportunity just waiting to happen.
A predator's dream
A
target.
terrible thought, but yes. Now, police did look into a known sex offender who was in the area, a man who later killed another IU student named Hannah Wilson, but they officially dismissed any connection.
Which brings us back to Israel Keys. I really want to circle back to that Reddit thread you sent me because this sent me down a massive rabbit hole this week.
The bogeyman of true crime.
He really is. And usually when internet sleuths try to connect a famous serial killer to a local missing person case, I roll my eyes. It feels like fan fiction most of the time. But this Freedom of Information Act request, explain what the user who went by Entropy Trip found.
Well, see, that's the thing. It's not about what they found. It's about what they didn't find. So Israel Keys has a massive FBI file. He was this terrifyingly meticulous serial killer who buried kill kits all over the United States. He traveled constantly. Because he's dead, you can file a FOIA request for his FBI files, and the FBI releases them. They're heavily redacted, for sure, but they send you the documents.
They acknowledge that the documents exist.
Correct. But when this user requested documents specifically linking Israel Keys to Lauren Spierer, the FBI's response changed completely. They didn't send redacted files. They didn't say no responsive records found.
They gave the Glomar response, didn't they?
Essentially, yes. They gave a response that said they could neither confirm nor deny the existence of such records because doing so could interfere with an active law enforcement proceeding.
Wait, hold on. Active proceeding. Israel Keys killed himself in prison in 2012. He's been dead for years.
That's the part that makes the hair on your arms stand up. Why would a file connecting a dead serial killer to Lauren Spierer still be considered part of an active investigation in 2026?
It implies that the FBI is still looking at something very specific there, something they don't want public.
That's one interpretation. The other is that the Spierer case file itself is so active that any document that cross-references it is automatically sealed under that same protection. The podcast True Crime Bullsh has done incredible work tracking Key's movements, and there are gaps in his timeline that could potentially place him in or near Indiana at that time.
So it's not impossible.
It's highly unlikely. Keyes was usually a much more careful planner, but the FBI's refusal to release that specific file is a hook that keeps the internet sleuths awake at night.
It's just another door that is locked shut in a case full of locked doors.
Just like every other door in this case.
Which really brings us to the human cost of all this. It's February 2026. Charlene and Robert Spierer have been waking up every single morning for nearly 15 years not knowing where their daughter is.
The psychological torture of a missing person case is unique. I was reading the coverage from the 14th anniversary in 2025 on WDRB, the local news. And Charlene Spierer gave a statement. She just said, "I hope with all my heart the day will come when the not knowing comes to an end."
It's the not knowing. That's the part that's so brutal. If you find a body, you can have a funeral, you can grieve, you can visit a grave, you can begin some sort of healing process. But missing is the state of suspended animation. You can't move forward, you can't go back, you're just stuck.
She mentioned in an earlier interview that back in the summer of 2011, she expected to find Lauren before the leaves fell that autumn. She thought it'd be a matter of weeks, maybe months. Now the leaves have fallen and regrown 15 times.
Yeah, and the town itself has changed. I mean, think about the students who are at IU right now. They were toddlers when Lauren disappeared.
That is a stark realization, isn't it? To the current student body, Lauren Spierer isn't a peer. She's not a classmate they might have known. She's a legend. She's a ghost story. She's the warning they get told during freshman orientation. Don't walk alone at night. Remember Lauren Spierer.
The IU source we looked at had quotes from current students, and one of them said, "I think twice before I go out at night. I think twice before I trust someone to be my friend."
Wow. That is a heavy, heavy legacy. She changed the culture of the town. She changed how young people view their own friends and their own safety.
The Bloomington police still say the case is very active. They say they've received over 3,000 tips to date. But 3,000 tips and 0 arrests. It feels like they're searching for a needle in a haystack, and we're not even sure if the needle is still in the barn.
The hope, and this is really what the Sean Cohen book was trying to do, is to shake the tree. Because relationships change over 15 years. Allegiances fray.
Right. These guys aren't college kids anymore. They're men in their mid-30s. Maybe they're married now. Maybe they have daughters of their own.
Maybe a former girlfriend knows something. Maybe an ex-roommate from back then heard a drunken confession one night. The hope is that the loyalty that held that group together in a bond of silence in 2011 has eroded over time. That somebody's conscience finally outweighs their fear of prosecution.
Or that the statute of limitations on lesser crimes has run out, making it safer for someone to finally come forward and talk.
Well, there is no statute of limitations on murder. But if it was an overdose, if it was manslaughter or abuse of a corpse, those legal windows might be closing or certainly more complex. But usually, cases this old, they break because allegiances shift. Someone gets divorced, someone gets sober, someone finds God. And that's what the Spierers are still waiting for.
So after all of this, where does that leave us?
It leaves us with a human tragedy that has become a frustrating legal precedent. We know the timeline down to the minute. We know she was failed by every single safeguard that should have protected her. And we know the legal system ultimately protected the men from civil liability because of that missing link of the body.
And we know that there are people walking around today, living normal lives, with jobs and families, who hold the key to this entire mystery.
And that brings me back to the one contradiction in all of this that bothers me the most.
What's that?
It's the contradiction of competence.
Okay, break that down for me.
The defense and the public narrative for years, it all relies on the idea that everyone involved was just too drunk to remember, too drunk to make good decisions. It was a tragic accident fueled by youth and intoxication.
Right, that's the story. A night of partying that went horribly wrong.
But then you look at their actions. We have evidence of phone calls being made to Massachusetts at 3 a.m. We have evidence of high-powered lawyers being hired within 24 hours. We have evidence of private polygraphs being strategically arranged. We have evidence of potential story coordination for years.
These are the actions of sober, calculating minds. Or at the very least, minds that are functioning at a very high level of self-preservation.
Exactly. So here is the provocative thought that I think we should end on. If these men were sober enough to make long-distance phone calls, sober enough to immediately coordinate their stories in their silence, and sober enough to execute a sophisticated legal defense strategy from day one, were they really too intoxicated to walk a 4'11" girl 2.5 blocks home?
That is the question that just haunts this entire case, isn't it?
Or did something else happen in those final hours? Something that didn't just prevent them from walking her home, but something that forced them to ensure she never walked home at all.
The timeline stops at 4:30 a.m., but the truth is still out there.
It is. And someone listening to this right now might know what it is.
If you know anything, and we mean anything, no matter how small you think it has been nearly 15 years. It is time to end the not knowing for this family. You can contact the Bloomington Police Department. Their number is 812-339-4477.
Even the smallest detail could be the piece that finally finishes the puzzle.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.